Hi. Hi, Ian.
I my
Seems to be the
second ep-
tradition. Oh, it is the second one. Two. We're on a roll. Um,
the big two.
yeah, this is Finding Your Marbles. That is the name we gave it. So, how are you?
I'm a little chilly right now. You know how it is, in those cold New Jersey winters. How are you, Maya?
Oh, it's been a week, but it's okay. It's okay because we have a new week. There's always another, yeah.
We
Um,
sure do.
yes, I'm going to break the fourth wall and say thank you to people that listened to the last episode. I think you wanted to specifically thank someone.
I wanted to thank uh, a certain trombone player, Natalie. Thank you, Natalie. You keep on rocking in the free world.
do, do, do.
Do do
Do you
sick
watch
sick
Nardwuar?
nard. Yeah, sick nardwuar.
Okay, okay. So I know you like reading. What have you been reading lately?
Like aside from the thing,
Huh?
I've been reading Kierkegaard's Fear and Trembling by
Fear and
the
Trembling. What's that?
It's a book.
Coincidentally, I've also been reading Fear and Trembling.
Oh my god, what a coincidence. It's
I know.
almost like we planned this. I picked out a few books in the vein of the existentialist philosophy that we're going to read for the next few, I guess you'd phrase it as Ian led podcasts. And the first one on the list was Fear and Trembling by Søren Kierkegaard, a Danish philosopher. Pretty cool place if I do say so myself. Never been there. Hope to visit soon. Basically, a little background about Soren Kierkegaard is he was born in 1813. I think he was the youngest in his family, and
Little baby.
he was one of the only children of his family to survive infancy, which
Oh,
is pretty neat, I guess. Uh,
he had the good genes.
he did have the good gene. It was him and I think his older brother. They outlived all the other siblings, and so basically the books that Kierkegaard is most well known for is Fear and Trembling, which is what we're going to be discussing today, The Sickness Unto Death, Either Or, and the concept of anxiety. And a lot of these books kind of laid the foundation for what existentialism would become in like the 20th century with people like Camus and Sartre. So he's kind of like a proto existentialist. uh, a pretty important thing that happened in his adult life was he was engaged to this girl, Regine Olsen, and he broke off the wedding before they could get married because he thought that if they were to get married, the love that they had would to fade. So he kind of, in a way, and
Oh.
you'll get this reference later, he resigned his love to the infinite.
Hmm.
And then he passed away in the year of our Lord 1855 from this back injury that he got from when he was a child. He like fell out of a tree and he had a really deformed back, and it was like excruciatingly painful. And then he died, and at his funeral, he was buried by the uh, state church of Denmark, and his cousin, and like he broke into the funeral and he said, "Hey, he wouldn't have wanted to been buried by you," and then got arrested for that.
Oh,
So that's a little bit of the history of Soren Kierkegaard, the father of
wow.
existentialism.
Yeah, I read into his religious background that he was a Lutheran. It says that it combines the emphasis on biblical doctrine with the Reformed emphasis on individual piety.
He didn't like the church, especially of Denmark. He saw it as like corrupt,
Hmm.
you know, like more of like a symbol of power rather than religious.
I don't blame him. I was confused because there was a lot of this idea of like you and me, we go to the church on Sunday and look at this big guy, what he says. And I was thinking, okay, so like obviously he didn't say it like that, but it seemed as though he was practicing a religion of some sort, and I didn't know if that was more societal or like personal. And
It was definitely more like he was very religious. I mean, you can obviously tell considering like the content of the book.
and the allusions to the Bible, yeah.
It's like the whole book is an examination of the story of Abraham and Isaac and what is it, Genesis? One thing that he said when I was researching him is that he wasn't writing for himself, like he was writing for God.
Hmm.
It's not like he's just this guy who's like, I'm spiritual but not religious. Like he was a really religious guy.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't sure who the audience was. So I was thinking maybe it was to like warn his brothers, like his fellow religious people, like, hey, don't believe everything you read, don't believe everything you hear.
I mean, doesn't he kind of say who the audience is in like the preface, sort of,
Hmm.
where he kind of goes like, people try to go beyond faith. They think that it's something that you instantly have, and he's trying to like tell, I guess, the society which he grew up in and lived in that they don't have faith yet. They think they do, but they haven't really achieved it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I wasn't sure if it was more of like to educate everyone or to warn them. Um but yeah, I pulled out the quote, thinking means to go beyond faith. Yeah, basically, you need more proof.
I have a one of the quotes that I highlighted is even though one were capable of converting the whole content of faith into the form of a concept, it does not follow that one has adequately conceived faith and understand how one got into it or how it got into one.
Mm.
So I think he's putting kind of like a warning that, you know, faith is meant to be faith. You can't really prove it, and to go beyond that is negating the purpose of faith, in a sense.
Okay. I found it like, I don't know. I couldn't tell if he was critiquing. I just didn't know because I was thinking in this like 1800s, in that society there was probably more religious people than non-religious people. So I just was unsure. When he started to praise more of Abraham's work than condemn, I was like, okay, he is very true to um the religion it says he follows. The fact that he um believes more in the pure form of his religion says, rather than like the people that taint it and preach it.
It seems like it definitely seems like he has a more personal idea of religion than like a communal one. That being religious is a very solitary act, whereas things like the church are inherently communal. So that's why he kind of disagrees with it.
Hmm. I see. He talks a lot about the universal. Now, is that different than now when people say, I believe in the universe? Would you say those two are different?
The universe, as in like a more spiritual sense of the word or a more scientific sense of the word?
Not in the scientific way. For example, some people believe that God and quote unquote the universe are interchangeable. They're synonymous.
I And you're asking if I believe that God and the universe are synonymous?
First that, and then also, how does that differ from the universal?
I do not think God is the universe. I am of more agnostic
Mm.
than religious or spiritual one.
So is there a universe to you?
There's a scientific universe.
And that is all that exists to you? Okay. Does a God exist to you?
I don't personally believe in like at least any religion that I've read about or heard about any concept of God that they have. One idea that I kind of liked is like Einstein's, which is kind of like that God is like nature in itself. It's just the pure beauty of the world, not like that there's a big man in the sky with a beard and he's an absolute hunk with muscles everywhere. I don't believe in that. But
Okay.
I don't think by universal he means it in like a spiritual sense. Like he talks about the ethical being the universal, and I think for him the ethical is it's like a way one conducts themselves in life. And I think by universal, at least in the instance in this book, he's talking more about like the society, like the universal society that humans live in, kind of, not like a spiritual sense.
As in universal, does he mean just like any construct that like everyone can agree on?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's mainly like because he also talks about the aesthetic, and the aesthetic I think is more individual, and the ethical is more communal. So I think that that's like what makes it universal. If that makes any sense, if you're picking up what I'm putting down.
To make this all about me, because why not?
Oh, of
On
course.
the other
Go right
hand,
ahead.
I am quite the opposite. I think I believe in a God. Now, I have a question actually. So, you don't necessarily believe that there's a singular God. Would you be open to like polytheism? To you, is there such thing as multiple gods?
To me, I just don't really think that there's anything like a god.
Okay.
I think if there's anything comparable, it's just this. Like I don't think there's any personification of a deity that has human characteristics or like physical characteristics. I think if there is one, which I don't really think there is, it'd be something more ethereal. And it's not like I'm like an atheist. Like I'm like I don't like God. If you're a Christian, you're a doodoo head. Like I'd like to believe in God, but I just don't think that he exists. Like I think it's a good and very comforting concept, but it's just not one that, in my experience, I buy into.
Okay. I was just curious.
But I won't like trash anybody if they do. Like I want to be clear about that. I respect all religions.
Yeah, I'm curious if you got to know more about other religions and other forms of religion, and but if you were to expand on that, I wonder if you would connect with anything other than like the very Christian dominant religions you might be familiar with.
I also grew up Catholic, so that might be why I'm a little bit more against Christianity. I did not have a good time, I must say. And I could tell the story about the Catholic summer camp I went to, but we'll save that for another day.
Okay. Yeah, give the listeners something to look forward to. So, I am Christian. I believe in a God. I am so the whole universe, the universe being synonymous to God, I'm not sure about that. I don't know enough to draw a conclusion. So, I'm providing that Christian perspective for any of you wondering.
And I'm providing the edgy atheist side.
Okay.
That was sarcasm. Okay, so should we hop into the book? I guess a little bit more.
Why not?
All right. So, do you have any? What were your thoughts on the book? Like, do you like it? You like Kierkegaard? You a big Kierkegaard head?
See, I know you were like, I think you'll like this. I'm curious, like, what about it you thought I would really enjoy?
So we've had like a few like philosophical discussions. So I always kind of got the sense that you liked thinking deeply about certain things, and I knew I knew that Fear and Trembling was it was like a rumination on the Abraham and Isaac story of Abraham going to sacrifice Isaac, and it's like a different perspective, something that actually makes you think, and it's religious too, so it's not like so it's not like it's questioning your faith, but it's questioning, I guess, kind of your comfort level, I guess, with at least the Abraham Isaac story.
Yeah, I haven't decided yet. Maybe by the end I'll figure out if I liked it or not. But my mother is like my best friend. When I was telling her about the book, she was saying Fear and Trembling. Well, that is a quote from Philippians. So it's like a nod to that. So I actually reached out to an English teacher of mine, and I was like, Fear and Trembling, do you know anything about this? And the teacher hadn't read Fear and Trembling, but they explained the illusion in the title, I think, pretty nicely. The scriptural reference to which Kierkegaard refers is Philippians 2:12. Paul's discussing how the faithful at Philippi must continually work at being people of Christ. Faith, Paul implies, is not a passive existence. It is a continual process of renewal and active love for God and the neighbor. So that's the person I was speaking to. That was their summary of that. Fear and Trembling, the title. Just from the start, I was like, okay, it has a lot to do with religion. So I was a little anxious because I was unsure whether or not this was going to be like a harsh critique or a praise of religion. I didn't know. But it was a good mix, and I enjoyed how it made me kind of go back and analyze with more depth things I had read before. Because I'm quite familiar with Abraham and Isaac's story, but within like the problem 1 and 2, like I was like, wait a second, what? Okay, I found the quote. Okay. So this is Philippians 2:12. Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, so now, not only as in my presence, but much more in my absence, work out of your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure. So this is a letter to church people. Basically, you have a due diligence to do, and this is something that you should abide by.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something we were talking about a little bit earlier, where it's his purpose for writing is because people, I guess, just assume, at least when it was written, that they have faith, that they don't really need to do anything to participate in their religion. Whereas I think Kierkegaard, one of his main points is that it's not as easy as people make it out to be, and people kind of just enjoy it on the surface level, in a sense. Do you remember the part? I think it's in the preliminary expectoration, where he talks about a priest, how people don't like understand the real story because they replace Isaac with the best, and then the preacher says Isaac is the best, and a man goes home and goes, "Oh, if I kill my best, which is my son, then God will love me." And then the pastor says like, "Oh, you're completely misunderstanding the story. That's not what it means at all." And then the guy who's like, "Oh, I would have killed my son," goes, "But that's basically what you were preaching, that to kill your best for God is a sign of ultimate faith," which, isn't really why Abraham had to sacrifice Isaac,
Right.
It's that people kind of just, they don't, it's not that they don't get it, it's just that they don't think deeply about it, which I think he says somewhere.
So he's like almost challenging the foundation of what the people around him are believing.
Yeah. Another thing that I really like about Fear and Trembling, like, first of all, like, even though I'm not that much of a religious person, I really enjoyed reading it because, for one, I feel like the way he writes is very, very poetic. Like, I really like the way he writes. It's very, like, palpable imagery, I guess.
Yes. I said it was, like, very engaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think even though it's at the beginning, I think my favorite part of the whole book is the part where he gives the different interpretations of how the story of Abraham and Isaac go.
Yes.
Where there's one where Abraham loses his faith because God would demand something like this and he was willing to do it. There's one where Isaac loses his faith. And
this is a section with the Roman numerals, right?
Yeah, at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And when I when I went to the aforementioned Catholic summer camp, we had to read the first part of Fear and Trembling, but we also had to read the book of Genesis. And I remember when reading the book of Genesis, I was
I'm so sorry.
yeah,
It's so dry.
yeah, I was like, this is kind of really badly written from a literary point of view, because it's like one of the main things that, like, when Cain kills Abel, it's just like, and then Cain slew Abel, and God punished him, and then it like moves on right away, and it's like,
Yes.
what, like,
I feel like Kierkegaard had a little bit of fun with this, or he was like, well, since you didn't give me any context, guess we're gonna write some. We're gonna fictionalize this. So I thought it was kind of at first I was like, wait a second, that's not what happened. But I think it's kind of
it's filling in the blanks in a
exciting.
way.
Yeah, for him to add meaning to like very matter of fact writing in Genesis.
So I got another question for you, Maya.
Go ahead.
Do you want the personal one, or do you want the more abstract question?
Give me both.
So I guess to prelude the question so that the listeners understand what we're talking about is and I think the same in the expectoration, he talks about two different nights. The night of infinite resignation and the night of faith. And the main difference between the night of infinite resignation and the night of faith is that uh, each night has one sole purpose in their life, one sole thing that they want to achieve in their lifetime. And Kierkegaard gives the example of a prince who's in love with a princess. And the night of infinite resignation, if he was unable to marry the princess, then he would infinitely resign her. That he'd know in the next life, in heaven, in the eternal consciousness of whatever comes after this life, that he would get her, but not in this human, in the flesh life. He would not be able to get her. And the night of faith does the same exact thing, except through virtue of the absurd, of the irrational, of just the impossible, he believes that he will get to marry the princess and love her just through faith alone, not through any rational anything that makes sense.
It's like manifestation. I believe.
My question to you, Maya, is: Are you a knight of infinite resignation? Are you a knight of faith, or are you neither? Are you one of the people who watches these knights perform the dance from the sidelines?
Oh wow. I would say like it depends what, you know? In that specific instance of like loving someone, I don't think I have say in whether or not I can get whoever in this life or the next life, because I do believe there is a next life for me. Um, I try to be optimistic, and I know this isn't one of the options, but I would say I'm a little bit of both because I see myself in the fact that I try to go after my dreams in this world, in this lifetime, and I will, like, all my actions are driven by some sort of goal I'm trying to achieve. So I have the faith to continue persevering and following a path to get me to my goals. But I also know that not everything is possible, and it's okay to let go of some of those dreams, and with the hope and also the assurance that some of them might happen in another life for me. But I don't think I'm entitled to anything I did not get in this life in the next life.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So I guess my next question would be, which isn't the bit more abstract one, but I guess my next question would be, so you don't have like, because Kierkegaard talks about the aesthetic, and that they're kind of somebody who spreads themselves thin over, they can do whatever they want, they don't have one goal, and that the two knights that he talks about do have like one pure value that they try to fulfill in life. And I guess, what would you say is the value for you above all the other ones that you strive for, whether through faith or through infinite resignation?
Like, what is my ultimate like life goal?
Uh, kinda. because that's sort of what he says the night of faith and infinite resignation is that they devote themselves to one thing.
Hmm. Well, honestly, um, I am a lot of what I do is driven by like my religious belief, believe it or not. What I am called to do as a person that is a Christian, a Christ follower, is like part of what my mission is like to spread knowledge of like God and like why I care so much and why it makes me happy because um I guess the point is I want everyone to be happy. Like personally, I feel more fulfilled with having religion. So, as a person that experiences great joy from that, why wouldn't I want other people that I love to also experience this joy? So, I would say it is, I guess, technically my ultimate purpose.
So, from what you just said to me, it sounds more like you're less a knight of faith or a knight of infinite resignation, and you're more of like a, I guess, maybe not exactly as he defines it, but you're more in the vein of like the tragic hero that he talks about,
Mm,
because it seems like you're trying to bring it towards the universal, which the way he uses it, or at least that I interpret it, is like the kind of communal space of humanity, if that makes any sense, like that we can understand. Because like he talks a lot about how like nobody would be able to understand, because he talks about in the third problem that people won't be able to understand faith. It's unintelligible. Being in a direct relationship with God, you can't really fathom it through the universal, which is, I guess, which is literally, I think, the way like everything is kind of communicated in a sense. So,
mm.
so do you?
Well,
Yeah, do you remember the original assertion that I said about the tragic hero thing?
yeah.
Okay.
So as I was reading, I kept finding like stuff about the tragic hero, and not that Kierkegaard puts down the tragic hero, but I felt myself being like, oh, I don't want to be a tragic hero like everybody else.
Yeah.
Like, and then I kind of found myself being like, does it matter? Are we meant to be heroic and like is it a and then I also was asking myself, is it a bad thing to aspire to be heroic? And part of me wanted to say no because this is what the author's condemning. But honestly, if I have a heroic attitude, then that's just how I am. That's my nature. So I can't um, what's it called, condemn what I believe in, because no matter how much I work to undo, I think that'll just be how I am. So there's no use in feeling sorry about that. But I don't think everyone is meant to be a tragic, like, or not necessarily a tragic hero, but not everyone is meant to have a heroic outlook on life. Which is fine because as we talked about in the last episode, like it's fine for people to have different thought processes and be unique. Um, so I think as much as I cringe at it, I think I tend to have a heroic outlook, and you can label me the tragic hero. I think that's appropriate.
I'll label you the tragic hero, Maya.
All right. Do you want to be labeled?
Well, actually, I was actually when I was reading, I was like, I don't feel like any of these apply to me because, as aforementioned,
Ooh.
I'm not really that religious, so I don't really see myself as a knight of infinite resignation, because I don't think that after we die there's anything left, and I
Mm.
don't see myself as a knight of faith because, again, I don't believe in a big muscular hunk up in the sky throwing his lightning bolt
Okay,
dumbbell
well,
smiting people.
when you describe him like that, then I don't either.
Well, if God is perfect, then he's the sexiest person ever, you know?
All right.
Okay,
Then.
but okay, we're getting off point. But although I do think I see things through like achieving them through virtue of the absurd, I don't necessarily do it because I have faith in a God, more in the entropy of the universe. But then he comes to the where is it? The problem 3, and towards the end he talks about the kind of archetypal character of Faust, and he labels Faust as a doubter. And I feel like if I'm anything that he categorizes, I feel like I'm the doubter.
You're the villain of the show.
Well, I'm not he's not necessarily the villain, because he says by keeping silent, he saves the universal from succumbing to the same sorrow that he experiences, you know? And I feel like if I'm anything, I'm that.
Are you a silent doubter?
I think I am, for the most part, because like instead of coming on this podcast and being like, "Oh, Maya, you believe in God? That's cringe. Get out of here. What?
I guess
you got to be edgy."
Yeah, I guess the atheism would be most aligned with loud doubter or like vocal doubter.
But I
wouldn't say you're silent. I would just say maybe.
But like, I don't want to. If there's a reason that I don't believe in these things, if I don't believe in God or Christianity, then I don't want to take what comfort people get from that. Like, I'd never try to convert. Excuse me. I'd never try to convert anybody out of their religion if it gives them comfort. And I feel like that's into this kind of state that I'm in, which is, it's not bad. Like, he says that, and I forget if it's in relation to a doubter, but he says that the path that these people walk is at the same time terrible yet great.
Right.
And I feel like if people are happy, I don't want to be like, oh, there's something greater, or there's something worse, like I don't want to be the reason that anybody questions their faith.
Yeah, I'm on with you on that, which is why when I meet people that have very strong belief they're in a different religion than mine, I am pretty hands off when it comes to expressing my religion. Like, I will talk about my religion, but I won't be with the intent of changing their mind.
Yeah.
Because as a person with religious beliefs, like we have like that mutual understanding where it's like, I have a strong belief in my religion, and I know that you respect my religion enough to not I guess meddle. So I would also express that same respect.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's how I would put it. It's kind of hard to label yourself because you're not necessarily the intended audience. Say you were reading this fresh off the press.
What, in like the 1840s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
say you were reading it.
Peasant boy in Denmark.
Yeah, exactly. And you're a silent doubter or whatever. I wouldn't even say you're a silent doubter, but if you had to label yourself, that's the closest thing. I'm not sure that the author really writes to the silent doubters.
So one thing that I really like about at least Fear and Trembling is that yes, it's a Christian, I guess, philosophical text. It deals almost explicitly with Christian themes and Christian stories and ideals, but I don't think he's necessarily pushing his beliefs onto whoever reads it. I think, like, at the end of each of the problems, he says, like, oh, where is it?
He does kind of like
he always says, like,
himself.
So either there is a paradox that the individual stands in absolute relation to the absolute, or Abraham is lost.
Right.
He doesn't say, oh, so I'm right. There's always this kind of lingering ability for the individual who's reading it to make up for their mind what he says. He's just putting forth his ideas, and he lets the reader, I guess, decide whether or not Abraham is a martyr or a madman, I guess.
Yeah. It's like he's a waiter at a fancy restaurant with a bunch of with a tasting menu, and he's like, "Huh? You like this one? I know it looks weird, but try it."
So do you want me to ask the other question I had, the more abstract one?
Oh, that was okay.
I haven't asked that one yet.
Okay, go for it.
So throughout the book, he says that Abraham's the father of faith, and he presents his reasons why that he should be considered that and not a murderer. And I guess one of the questions I had while reading it is, I mean, really, what benefit is there to being the father of faith? Because he says that he's never seen a knight of faith ever in his life, and that most people in his day and age try to go beyond faith. They don't accept it for what it is. So it seemed to me almost like Abraham was the father of a meaningless cause, because nobody has kind of the same faith he has. Sure, he's an ideal that people try to live up to, but again, in the thing that I brought up earlier with the priest talking to the guy, people don't really have a deep understanding of it. They take a surface level, I guess, survey of the story of Abraham, because the idea that he'd be actually genuinely willing to kill his son for God is harrowing, I guess. So I guess the question would be, is it really worth it for Abraham to be the father of faith if there's not much faith in the society that he's in? And I guess as an extension, we're in.
Well, I guess to that, I would ask, I have a really terrible analogy. Okay. Say you're in a candy store, somebody's stealing the Snickers, and they're gonna get away with it. There's no cameras. No one's gonna really care because this candy store is about to go out of business anyways. So like, do you do the heroic thing, which is say, hey, that's bad, that's wrong, there's like a law to uphold, or do you let it happen because it doesn't matter because no one's watching? And I guess it's more about I guess your character. And Abraham is he, well, first of all, he didn't know that he was going to A, be the father of the cause, and then B, that no one would follow.
Didn't he know that though? Isn't that what he was promised?
Well, later, yeah. But well, he was promised to be the father of many nations.
But
He wasn't really given a responsibility.
okay. I thought he was. From what I remember when I had to read Genesis, it was like he was God's chosen one. Like, he says in the book, God's elect, and I thought that was like the promises of him, like breeding forth like the blessed line was before that, and that's why like he had to have faith that he would have Isaac in the first place, because him and Sarah were both old hags.
I guess it's like, I guess father could be metaphorical too. Okay. Anyways, we're both right. But I think he didn't. So even if he did know that was going to be, he was promised that people would follow suit. So like, he almost had this obligation to do the right thing, but also, even if no one was watching and there was no lineage, why should we question Abraham just trying to do the right thing?
The right thing from the ethical point of view or from the religious point of view?
I guess the religious, what he deems as the religious, like what he deems as the right thing to do.
Okay.
And if in his perspective and his education and all he is aware of, if he's doing the absolute right thing to him, then like, are we to question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make that distinction because he mentions a lot in the book, like, if we were to look at this story ethically, then Abraham is just a murderer who tried to kill his son. But if you look at it religiously, which I guess we should define say what Kierkegaard defines the religious as, which is I guess he says that there's like three types of people that people can be. There can be the aesthetic, which is somebody who kind of just does things for themselves for that reason. There's the ethic, who does things for like kind of the greater nature, like the commune, the universal. And then there's the religious, which Kierkegaard defines as the individual being higher than the universal by being an absolute relation to the absolute, which the absolute in this instance is God. So the whole paradox, or not the paradox, so the religious is basically the aesthetic, but not for your own sake, for the sake of being an absolute relation to the absolute. I almost fell out of my seat again.
Yeah, I remembered the word I was thinking of. It's Abraham is being like in that religious realm, he's upholding his integrity. He's doing what he says he's going to do.
Yes.
Even if he looks like a murderer under the ethical scope. Are we to look at the ethical, like, and versus religious versus aesthetic from our perspective, knowing, like, having foresight and stuff, or are we to look at it in his perspective? Because to Abraham, maybe the ethical and religious are the same thing, because we know that God spared Isaac, but he doesn't know that.
That's the whole point of his faith, is that he knew, or he thought, that even though he had to sacrifice Isaac, he would still have Isaac in this life. That's what makes him the father of faith. Not the fact that he, like, doubted, not the fact that he was willing to sacrifice Isaac for God. It was the fact that he, in his heart, knew that Isaac was going to continue to be with him in this life, even though God said to sacrifice him. It's not that God, like, sprung on him that he was saving Isaac, that the ram happened to be on the mountain. Mount Moriah?
Mount Moriah, yes.
The whole point of him being the father of faith is because he had faith that he would continue to live with Isaac, even if, like, he did bring down the knife and kill him. Like, he says that he had faith that God would have resurrected him right after.
Oh, wow. That is some faith. I think that's why we have such a hard time understanding Abraham, because who acts like that? Who is like that?
Yeah, like he says that there's no knights of faith in the world, at least when he was writing it.
Just because, like, how often did Kierkegaard get out? You know, did he get the chance to travel the world? Do you know? Because who is he to say that there are no knights if he has not met everyone in this world?
I know that he walked around Denmark a lot. Like, he would walk the streets, and that people would be like, "Yo, there's that floppy Danish guy.
That man that called me unfaithful."
Yeah. I'm thinking about what you're saying, that how he doesn't know if he would have met them, and in the expectoration, he says that if he did meet one, they'd appear just like your average person.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess the question would be, how'd you know when somebody is a knight of faith versus when they're just an aesthetic person who's doing things for their own sake and not for the sake of having faith?
You wouldn't know, because you can't get in their head.
Or the question is, because he says that the knight of faith only has one goal in their life, so would you be able to tell that they're the knight of the faith by their goal? That they were like, oh yeah, it's my goal to I guess for the sake of the argument, being like, oh yeah, my goal is to be like, oh yeah, my goal is to be king of the world, and I have absolute faith that I'll do it. You know, like, would they have something, a conviction that sets them apart from the aesthetic, who would be able to flip flop what their values are at any given time?
I'm not sure I don't know, because yeah, not no one, but I think it's very rare for someone to maintain the same standing in life, and, like, in terms of, like, their goals, their perspective. As you grow, you start to maybe morph what you believe in, or your goals change, and that's normal. So I don't think anyone is, like, specifically set on something for all of their life. I think that's more rare.
But I think that's what makes that distinguishment, is that the knight of faith would only have one thing that they'd set their life to. Like he says, Abraham's is like being the father of Isaac. That, you know, that's like his main thing, and that's why he had such faith in the fact that even if he did sacrifice Isaac, he would still be able to have him in this life. You want to move on to a different question, Maya, or you want to keep digging the ground here?
I don't know. I was thinking it would be nice to have some context like the different fictionalized perspectives of.
Yeah, sure. I would like to put forth one more question, though, I guess.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's something that popped into your noodle while you were reading, but well, first of all, Kierkegaard, he didn't write this under his own name. He wrote it under the pseudonym. I think it's like Johannes de Silentio.
Yes.
And I guess my question is, throughout the whole book, he claims to not be a knight of faith. He claims to, I don't even know if he claims to be knight of infinite resignation, but he claims to not have real and complete faith. So how trustworthy really is this entire treatise if he can't experience what he's talking about so assuredly?
Yeah. Okay, so when I was emailing this teacher, I was saying, like, there's so much narrator unreliability. Just like,
Yeah.
I don't know. At the time I was writing this email, I was like frustrated. I was like, who is he to come in here and say this about Abraham, and like Abraham's just trying his best, and like all these things. I was like appalled, just as he probably intended, for when the Danish people would be reading it, they'd be like, oh, he said what about me? Like I elicited the same response. Abraham's not perfect by any means, but he's going after someone that is like unattainable. Like no one else is a knight in his eyes.
Yeah.
So I was almost like, if Abraham's not good enough, what does that make me?
Yeah.
I tend to admire Abraham's faith, just like the author does. But I wonder if the pseudonym was more so for his own protection, though. Because if he was well known, the church could have tried to remove him.
So one thing I do know about Kierkegaard is that some of his pseudonyms don't mean anything, because he writes under like I think almost all his major works are under a pseudonym, and I know that some of them mean something, and I think Johannes de Silentio does mean something. It means like John of the Silent. Yeah, I think it is significant that it's under a pseudonym and not under Søren Kierkegaard. You got any ideas about that, Maya? Aside from the church attacking him.
No, honestly, I think that's it. Like that's the only one that comes to mind, because when I think about when I learned about the Enlightenment and how the first few people to kind of come out and be like, hey, I think something else, like they were severely ridiculed or punished.
Well, I feel like I've been kind of had my hand on the wheel for most of this podcast episode so far. So is there anything that I guess you'd like to ask me, or that you'd like to dig deeper into?
Oh, okay. I wanted to get into like the different alternate fictionalized avenues for Abraham and Isaac's story.
In the prelude?
Yes. I'm going to read Genesis 22 so that there's context, because I went in cold. I was reading it and I had not read this specific section.
Yes.
In a really long time. So the sacrifice of Isaac. After these things, God tested Abraham, and he said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. And he said, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him, and his son Isaac. He cut the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place which God told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship, and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood off of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took his hand, the fire, and the knife, and they went off, both of them together. And Isaac said to his father, Abraham, my father. He said, here I am, my son. And he said, behold, the fire and the wood, but where's the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. So they went, both of them together. When they came to the place which God had told him, Abraham built the altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar. on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from the heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. He said, Here I am. He said, Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And Abraham lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the name of that place, The Lord Will Provide. As it is said to this day, On the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of the heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies, and in your offspring shall the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham lived at Beersheba. So what I'm not reading is the next few lines is his lineage. So there's a few things I want to pull from this. So there's a lot of symbolism. Abraham says, Here I am 3 times, I believe. He is being called to 3 times. 3 is a very special number in the Bible because
Holy Trinity.
That too, there's so much symbolism. It took 3 days to ride to Mount Moriah. Peter denies Jesus 3 times. There is, on the 3rd day he rose. There's just so much to do with 3.
Is it like actual symbolism, or is it just like it just so happens that it's 3 and that people read into it, or is it like meant to be symbolic?
I would say it's intentional. The amount of times the number 3 is listed. I would say it's intentional.
Okay.
At the end, his blessing that God announces to him. So he will bless, God is promising to bless Abraham, and he will multiply his offspring as the stars in the heaven and the sand on the seashore. So the significance of Isaac and the significance of a lineage is the fact that Abraham and Sarah could not have children.
Yes.
For 70 years they were married, and then when they were 99 they had their child, Isaac. Something like that.
Didn't you have like a child with was it Hagar? Yeah. Wasn't
think
Sarah like,
so.
Yo, I'll let you hit it, Abraham. You go right ahead.
But it was just
but he was not, I guess, not satisfied. I don't know.
My man ain't have sex in 70 years and he ain't satisfied. Shut the hell up, Abraham.
I think that the significance of Isaac is because it took so long for Isaac to arrive. And what 9-year-old has a kid? Isaac was special.
Yeah.
But there was no way that was actually going to happen, but it did happen by God's faith. So Isaac is special, which is why it makes no sense that Abraham would just sacrifice his son.
Yeah.
Which is the absurdity that Kierkegaard likes to play with. Abraham's a little late to the game, only has like a kid and a half. The idea that God will multiply his offspring is tremendous, because he thinks, oh, I'm only going to get this one kid. And now he's promised to be like this great father of a nation. It's almost like his patience is rewarded.
Yeah, it's like he had to have faith that he would actually have Isaac, just in the same way he would have to have faith that even though he had to sacrifice him, he would still get him back. It's like where does Kierkegaard says something like that in the like his eulogy to Abraham, where he's praising Abraham. It's the part where he says, that glorious treasure, which was just as old as faith in Abraham's heart, many, many years older than Isaac, the fruit of Abraham's life, sanctified by prayers, matured in conflict, the blessing upon Abraham's lips, this fruit was now to be plucked prematurely and remained without significance.
Yeah. So it adds so much more meaning, so much more like fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
Another thing, like if you were to read on the part I did not read, the rest of Genesis 22, there is just a list of names. this person is the father of this person, and if you've read the Old Testament, it's everywhere. So the significance of that, and the reason why that happens so much, is because Abraham, if you follow the Bible, tends to follow this lineage of Abraham, and it is directly related to Jesus.
Okay, I was about to ask that.
Yeah, so the twists and turns of the Bible eventually lead up to Jesus, which is why it's so important, because if Isaac was not spared, then there would, you know what I mean, there would be no Jesus if Isaac was not spared. The reason I read it is because we were saying, like, it's so bland.
Yeah.
Like, okay, Abraham's like, here I am, about to kill
Here I
my
am.
son. Here I am. And then the angel's like, yo, stop it. Your son's fine. He'll be spared. There's a ram. It's like so lackluster. And Kierkegaard is like, oh, well, let me give you an alternate ending. Let me roll up my sleeves and write some fiction. Which at first I did not realize was fiction. So I was like, excuse me, that's wrong.
Yeah.
That's not what happened. But
his own interpretations of what could have possibly happened.
So there's different scenarios. There's one where Abraham gets this monologue that we've been like yearning for, where he's like expressing his distress and how he wants to kill Isaac and how he has to control himself and that it's all in his head. And then there's another one where Abraham does the right thing, but he does explain the difficulty in it. And then there's another version where Abraham isn't honest with Isaac, and he knows something Isaac doesn't. And then there's the last one where Isaac walks away from faith. So
I would like to read part of the first one, because I think it's just like, it's very emotionally palpable. Like, it's very like, I don't know, it like, you can feel the desperation. But Abraham said to himself, I will not conceal from Isaac whither this course leads him. He stood still, he laid his hand upon the head of Isaac in benediction, and Isaac bowed to receive the blessing. And Abraham's face was fatherliness. His look was mild, his speech encouraging. But Isaac was unable to understand him. His soul could not be exalted. He embraced Abraham's knees. He fell at his feet imploringly. He begged for his young life, for the fair hope of his future. He called to mind the joy in Abraham's house. He called to mind the sorrow and loneliness. And then I'm going to skip a little bit to the next part that I thought was emotionally palpable. It's Abraham's response to Isaac, where he says, he seized Isaac by the throat, threw him to the ground, and said, Stupid boy, dost thou then suppose that I am thy father? I am an idolater. Dost thou suppose that this is God's bidding? No, it is my desire. And I think it's so like, oh my God. Ooh.
I was like, excuse me.
Giving me chills.
If you could rewrite history, which one do you prefer? Do you prefer the most dramatic one, which is Abraham being a murderer?
Of the four options, I quite like the last one.
You feel like it's more realistic?
I think it is, in a sense, because because the whole book looks at it through like Abraham's point of view, what he must have been experiencing. And I feel like this one and the first one are the ones that really just examine what Isaac would have felt.
Yeah, like you don't really get to hear much about what he felt in that moment. But I remember I was talking to my mom about it, and I was like, what do you think? Did Isaac feel anything? Did Abraham feel anything? Like, because there's so much is left to interpretation, that my mom was saying, like, I don't think Isaac was old enough. Like, it doesn't really say his age, but he didn't question, but in the same sense Abraham didn't question either. But there's just my mom was saying, like, she didn't think Isaac was old enough to really know what was happening, which is why nothing was explained to him. So
I mean, it was also, Kierkegaard says that he didn't explain it to him because he wouldn't have been able to understand, because it's above, like, his faith is above the universal, and because Isaac, I guess, didn't have the same scenario faith that Abraham had, he wouldn't be able to understand what he had to say. And my other thing to that is, if you look at like some of the art of like the binding of Isaac, it's brutal looking, and like there's most of them like are like there's one by Caravaggio where he has like the knife like right behind his head and he's like pushing his head down, and I changed my background to one of them because I really liked the painting, and it's like
You like the paint without the
the
teeth.
painting. And he put the cloth over Isaac's head, and it's like his neck is like he's pushing Isaac's head down, and he's like his neck is out, and it's like the painting is at the exact moment when the angel stops Abraham. But
Would you say that the art is more like that Isaac is being like manipulated in that way because Abraham's like, "Don't make me do it, God! Don't make me do it, God!" And he's like, he's taking his time. Or would you say that the art is just like to make Abraham look evil?
I feel like the art is more to try to convey the visceral reality of what it must have actually been like.
For Abraham or for Isaac?
I think for both, because you can't have one without the other, you know?
Very true. It's been a pleasure talking to you and talking about Fear and Trembling. I laughed, I cried, I was not expecting that. Thank you for challenging me to read this.
Anytime, Maya. It's been real and it's been fun, but it hasn't been real fun.
Oh. Well, thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Bye. Wear your seatbelt, everybody. You want to hear a joke?
Give me a Abraham joke.
It has to be about Abraham.
Duh.
I don't have any Abraham jokes.
I can only consume jokes of the religious media format.
What do you call a funny wheel?
What?
A satire. Ha 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 ha.
Okay.